In this video, we're going to derive the derivative of secant of x using the quotient rule. So first off, remember that secant of x is 1 over cosine of x. So what that tells us is the domain for h is going to be all reals except for we're going to want to exclude x values that are integer multiples of pi over 2 because those will make cosine 0. So n is an integer. So there's our domain of this function. Now let's go ahead and find a rule using the quotient rule. So the quotient rule says it's the denominator, cosine of x, times the derivative of the numerator minus the numerator times the derivative of the denominator, all over the denominator squared. Okay, so we got some easy derivatives here. The derivative of 1 is just 0, so we end up with cosine of x times 0 minus 1 times derivative of cosine x is negative sine x, all over cosine squared x. Now that gives us, well, this here is just product is 0, and a negative times a negative is going to give us a positive sine x on top and a cosine squared x on bottom, and there is our derivative written in terms of sine and cosine. Now if we wanted to write it in terms of other trig functions so we didn't have a quotient, we could split this into 1 over cosine x times sine x over cosine x. 1 over cosine x we know is secant x. Sine over cosine x we know is tangent x. So another way we'll see the derivative of secant written as the product of secant times tangent. And now the domain of h prime is actually the same as the domain of h because we have the same issue. Cosine of x being in the bottom, we don't want x to be any integer multiple of pi over 2.